There are moments in life when a person feels so far from God that even hope seems like a distant echo. And yet across generations, across countries, in homes and prisons and hospital rooms, one small devotion has quietly pulled wandering souls back into the Father's arms: the Rosary. Tonight, we begin with a simple truth. No one is too lost for Mary to find. No heart is too cold, no story too broken, no life too tangled. The Mother of God has chased down prodigals for centuries, and she does it the same way every time. One beat at a time, one Hail Mary at a time, one whisper of grace at a time. Picture this. A mother sits alone at her dining table long after midnight. Her son hasn't spoken to her in years. Her daughter hasn't been to church since college. Her husband left the faith decades ago. She feels powerless, except for the rosary wrapped between her fingers. Every bead feels like an anchor. Every prayer feels like a plea. And in heaven, Mary receives each word like a seed ready to grow. Or imagine a young adult, far from home, drifting into choices they swore they'd never make. One night, while digging through an old backpack, they find a rosary, tangled, dusty, forgotten. But when the cross touches their hand, something stirs. Not guilt, not fear, but a sudden memory of being loved, of belonging, of being wanted by God. These are the stories we tell today, the prodigals who walked back toward the Father because Mary walked toward them first. Because miracles are not always medical, not every rescue is dramatic. Sometimes the greatest miracle is a heart turning around. In this episode, you will hear about people who return to confession after 20, 30, even 50 years. Children who came back to their parents. Men who stepped away from addictions. Women who rediscovered peace. All because someone, somewhere, prayed the rosary with tears and stubborn hope. And as we begin, remember this. If you are praying for someone who has wandered far away, don't stop. Don't give up. Heaven is already moving. Tonight, Mary is still searching for her lost children. And she never comes back empty. Dash-handed the son who showed up at the door. Our first testimony begins with a mother named Alina, a woman whose heart had been stretched, broken, and repaired more times than she could count. Her son Daniel had walked away from the church in his late teens. What began as skipping Mass slowly became rejecting faith entirely. What began as frustration turned into rebellion, and eventually into bitterness. For 12 years, Alina barely heard from him. Every Christmas, she prayed he would come. Every birthday, she waited for the phone to ring, and every night, she whispered the same prayer through her rosary. Mother, bring him home. I don't care how. Just bring him home. Most people would call it wishful thinking. But Alina knew what many parents have learned only after years of heartache. Mary does her best work with lost children. One evening, while cleaning her bedroom, Alina found the rosary Daniel had received at his first communion. The cord was slightly frayed. The crucifix had a faint scratch on it. She pressed it to her forehead and wept. That night, she didn't pray one rosary, she prayed 3, each one for a different wound in her son's heart. What Alina didn't know was that on that same night, miles away, Daniel sat alone in his apartment after another argument with friends. Another bad decision, another moment of emptiness. He felt angry at everything, and especially angry at himself. He reached into a drawer looking for an old charger, and instead found a folded piece of paper. It was a handwritten note from years earlier, tucked into his backpack by Alina before he left home. If you ever feel lost, pray one Hail Mary. I will pray the rest for you. He froze. The paper felt almost warm, like it had been waiting. He didn't pray a full rosary. He didn't pray a decade. He didn't even pray the full Hail Mary. He just whispered one word, Mom. And then, after a long silence, Mother Mary, if you're real, help me. That was enough. The next morning, Alina opened her front door to grab the mail and nearly dropped everything she was holding. Daniel was standing there, tired, nervous, ashamed, but home. He didn't know what to say. She didn't need him to say anything. She simply held up the rosary he had forgotten years ago and whispered, "I knew she would bring you back." That afternoon, they talked for hours. And by evening, Daniel asked her the question she had waited over a decade to hear. "Mom, can you teach me the rosary again?" One Hail Mary, one broken heart, one mother who refused to give up, and heaven did the rest. Now let's go deeper, because the rosary is not just a prayer you say. It's a prayer that changes the atmosphere around you and the condition of your heart. You see, every time you pray the rosary, something invisible but profoundly real begins to happen. Your mind becomes quieter, your spirit becomes stronger, your heart becomes more aligned with God's will, your soul becomes more resistant to spiritual attacks. And why is that? Because the rosary is a prayer that unites you directly with the life of Jesus through the eyes of his mother. When you meditate on each mystery, you're not just remembering events, you're actually entering into them spiritually. You stand beside Mary at the Annunciation. You walk with Jesus as he carries the cross. You witness the resurrection with new hope. And this is why the rosary is so powerful. It reshapes your inner world so that you can stand stronger in the outer world. It's not magic, it's not superstition, it's transformation. And Mary knows exactly what you need, because she lived every joy, every sorrow, and every triumph alongside Jesus. So when you pray the rosary, you're not praying alone, you're praying with her. And she is guiding you closer to the heart of Christ. That is the spiritual meaning behind the rosary's power. It changes you from the inside out and through you. It changes your life. Now I want to share with you something truly powerful. Because the rosary doesn't just change hearts in theory, it changes hearts in real life, in ways that will leave you speechless. These are the stories of prodigals. People who walked far away from God. People who thought they were too lost, too broken, too far gone, until the rosary found them. Story 1. The son who wanted nothing to do with God. There was a young man whose mother prayed the rosary for him every single night. He was angry, rebellious, and completely uninterested in faith. But one night, while his mother prayed in the next room, he felt a sudden urge to open the drawer where he kept an old rosary. He didn't even know why. He just picked it up, held it, and for the first time in years, he whispered, "God, if you're real, show me." That moment became the turning point. Today, he's back in the church, all because his mother's rosary never stopped fighting for his soul. Story 2. The woman who lost herself to anxiety. There was a woman who felt overwhelmed by life anxiety. Pressure, loneliness, everything. One day, while crying in her car, she remembered her grandmother's words. "When you can't find peace, pray the rosary. It will find you." She started with shaky hands, barely able to focus, but bead by bead, Hail Mary by Hail Mary, the panic started to fade, not instantly, but steadily, consistently, gently. Today, she says the rosary didn't just bring her back to God, it brought her back to herself. Story 3. The man who thought he could never be forgiven. Carried guilt for years, mistakes, choices, decisions he wished he could erase. He avoided prayer because he thought God was disappointed in him. But one day, while cleaning an old box, he found a rosary his father had given him before he passed away. He felt something stir inside, a mix of sorrow and hope. He prayed one decade, then another, and for the first time in a long time, he felt loved, not judged, not condemned, just loved. That's when he knew God had never left him. He had simply stopped listening. These stories have one thing in common: every one of these prodigals came home because of the same humble chain of beads, the rosary, the prayer that pulls souls back to God, even when they resist, even when they run, even when they think they're unworthy, because Mary never stops reaching for her children, and the rosary is her hand extended toward every wandering heart. You may be wondering, why the rosary? Why this prayer out of all prayers seems to pull people back to God even when everything else fails? It's because the rosary doesn't argue. It doesn't debate. It doesn't pressure, and it doesn't demand instant change. The Rosary accompanies. It walks with us. It meets people exactly where they are, even in their most wounded places. 1. Because the Rosary speaks to the heart before the mind, prodigals often avoid church. Avoid conversations about faith. Avoid anything that feels like a confrontation. But the Rosary doesn't confront, it invites. It begins with a single bead, a single Hail Mary, a single moment of openness, and grace slips in quietly like light, entering a dark room through a tiny crack too, because Mary never gives up on her children. Mother's love is relentless, and Mary, the Mother of God, the Mother of the Church, our Mother never stops seeking her children who are lost or afraid. When someone prays the Rosary, even imperfectly, even distracted, even reluctantly, they place one foot back on the road home, and Mary walks the rest of the way with them. 3. Because the Rosary softens hearts over time. Prodigals rarely return in a dramatic moment. It happens slowly, quietly, like the tide rising. The Rosary has a way of loosening knots in the heart, rewriting old wounds, breaking down walls brick by brick, until one day the person realizes, I'm not running anymore. 4. Because grace works through faithfulness, not perfections. So many people believe they have to fix themselves before returning to God. But the Rosary whispers, come as you are. Start where you are. One prayer is enough for today. That's why the Rosary changes lives, not because people are perfect, but because God responds to small faith with big mercy. 5. Because every decade leads to conversion. The mysteries of Christ, His humility, His suffering, His sacrifice, His love begin to reawaken the prodigal soul. They remind us who we are and whose we are. Every Our Father is a step toward the Father's house. Every Hail Mary is a hand held by a mother who won't let go. Every decade is a doorway through which grace can enter. This is why prodigals return, not because they suddenly become holy, not because they deserve it, not because they figure everything out. They return because Mary sought them, loved them, and prayed them home through the Rosary. As we talk about prodigals returning, it's important to understand something. Conversion rarely happens in one dramatic moment, most of the time. It begins with small, almost invisible signs, gentle shifts in the heart that others might not notice. But heaven notices, Mary notices, and the Rosary helps these signs take root. Here are some of the most common ways people quietly begin coming back. 1. A growing desire for peace. Prodigals often carry deep unrest and ache they can't explain, but when they start praying the Rosary, even hesitantly, even irregularly, they begin to feel a small calm inside. Not dramatic, just enough to make them want more. This desire is grace at work, a gentle tug, pulling their soul home too. Old wounds start to hurt less. Many who leave the church carry hidden pain, hurt from family, from parish experiences, or from their own guilt. Mary doesn't erase these wounds overnight. She soothes them during the mysteries, especially the sorrowful mysteries. People often realize, I'm not alone in my suffering, and that realization changes everything. 3. Their conscience begins to wake up. This is one of the clearest signs. A person who had stopped caring suddenly begins to care again. They feel a nudge to apologize. They feel uncomfortable with patterns that once seemed normal. They begin to think about confession. Even if they don't go yet, the Rosary prepares the heart for mercy long before the person steps inside a confessional. For a sudden pull toward home. Many prodigals describe this moment. Church door they haven't walked through in years suddenly feels less intimidating. A mass they had no intention of attending suddenly calls to them. A crucifix they once ignored now moves them to tears. Grace becomes familiar. God comes familiar. It's not fear. It's not pressure. It's recognition. A soul remembering where it belongs. 5. Mary creates moments of return. This is something almost everyone experiences, a perfectly timed homily, a gentle conversation with a friend, a memory of childhood prayer, a random urge to walk into a chapel, or simply the feeling of being loved again. These aren't coincidences, they're mercies, arranged by a mother who sees the heart before the person even whispers a prayer. 6. Confession no longer feels impossible for many prodigals. Confession is the hardest part, but slowly, gently, the rosary reduces the fear. By the time they finally go, they often describe it like this: I felt like I was coming home, not being judged. I cried. I wasn't expecting to cry. It felt like God had been waiting for me, and He has, for years, for decades, for a lifetime. The rosary doesn't just bring prodigals. It keeps them there because the rosary isn't just a prayer, it's a relationship. A daily embrace, a gentle touch of grace that never lets go. Prodigals who returned, the rosary that pulled them back to God. Take a moment, wherever you are, to breathe, to be still, to let the stories you've heard settle into your heart. Maybe someone came to mind today. Son, a daughter, a spouse, a sibling, a friend who has wandered far from God. Maybe the ache you feel is not just memory, but prayer rising inside you. Or perhaps the prodigal is you. If so, listen closely. You are not too far. You are not too lost. You are not too late. Mary has never stopped watching the road for you. She knows every step you've taken, even the ones taken in fear, in rebellion, in sorrow, and she has been walking beside you the whole time, placing people in your path, whispering invitations into your heart, waiting for the moment you would turn your eyes toward heaven again. The rosary is her extended hand. If you have wandered, take it. If someone you love has wandered, place them gently into that same hand. God is never defeated by distance. He is never overwhelmed by sin. He is never intimidated by brokenness. He specializes in remainance. So now, as we close this episode, I invite you to join me in a simple, heartfelt prayer. Final prayer. Mary, Mother of Mercy, Mother who searches for the lost and brings peace to the weary, hold every wandering heart in your embrace. For those far from the church, be a gentle light in their darkness. For those afraid to return, be there courage. For those carrying shame, be there comfort. For those who are praying for a loved one, be their hope. Lead every prodigal home, guard every family in your tenderness, and draw all of us closer to the sacred heart of your Son, Jesus Christ, in whose name we pray. Amen. If today's episode touched your heart, consider sharing it with someone who needs hope. You never know, might be the seed that brings them home.